Hey everybody, this is Art. He is a fabulous filmmaker. I met him at the Beaufort International Film Festival. He has a wonderful film called On Paper that we screened at Tryon last year, which I really enjoyed. If you want to see it, hit him up. He might have a way that
Mm,
you can watch it. Sorry to put you on the spot like that.
no, no, no.
But yeah, so we connected at Beaufort and we chatted, and he is a are you a filmmaking instructor or do you just instruct a lot?
No, yeah, I'm a film professor out here in LA at the New York Film Academy. They have two main campuses, Burbank and New York. So yeah, I'm at the Burbank location.
Very, very cool. And while he was not able to join us for Tryon this last year, we've stayed in touch, and I know that he has a lot to offer. This evening, we will be talking about 6 keys to creating compelling dramatic films. So, Art, I'll let you take it away.
Cool. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Good seeing you all virtually here. Thanks for joining. Awesome. You're all here. 6 keys to creating compelling dramatic films. And I kind of wanted to put an asterisk next to dramatic because, I think a lot of these ideas that I'm going to be talking about really relate to any genre or type of movie in general. But for the most part, my examples and the things I'll be discussing will be centered around drama. That's obviously me. That's my email address. After this, hit me up. Any questions, anything y'all want to discuss after the fact, I'm happy to chat. So, just a little bit about me. That's my email address. I'm from Wisconsin originally. I actually happen to have my Wisconsin pint glass here. I've been in LA since 2001 when I went to film school out here. Like a lot of people, who come out to Los Angeles, have worked in the industry for a number of years. In 2011, then I got hired at the New York Film Academy as a teacher, but I ended up working a lot of administration. So I got promoted over and over and over and over. And while I taught a lot and I did a lot administratively, and I traveled the world literally for the New York Film Academy. I was in Australia for a little bit. I was in Italy for a little bit. I wasn't making as many movies during that time. I was teaching a lot, but not making as many movies. 20, a little personal information. In 21, I got married. In 22, my wife was pregnant. And I'm like, you know what? I'm done with administration. I got to make some movies. So, and of course, start this family of ours, right? So, and that's when I made On Paper, which played Tryon Film Festival. So I've just kind of gotten back into that game, but also after stepping down from administration, I'm teaching full time now. I was teaching part time then. So that's a little bit about me. I got this quote here that's on my website. I aim to tell engaging and challenging stories through poetic, moving imagery. And I'll talk a little bit about that more as we go on in our presentation. Before we get started, so rules about rules and where did this all come from? So these aren't rules, right? There really are no rules. This kind of came from having, I mean, I was thinking about it and I'm like, how many student films do I work with, throughout a given year? It could be anywhere from 100 to 200 a year, whether it's in post, pre-production, screenwriting, production, filming, what have you. And a lot of these things that I'm going to present are just kind of observations I've made over the years that I kind of see over and over and over, in addition to having done a little bit of the film festival circuit thing with my last film and seeing some of these things in some of the festival films that I've seen as well. But are they rules? No. And of course, you're going to find, and I'm going to talk about some examples where they don't follow these rules or these guidelines or these ideas, and they're awesome. They're great. So there's no rule per se. These are just things that I've seen over and over that I think maybe could be addressed a bit. I have these 6 ideas. It probably could have been 20. It probably could have been 50. We probably could have done a semester's worth of sessions here, right? So I'm just scratching the surface here. A lot of these ideas, some of these ideas I might spend a whole class talking about for 2 hours, and we have 10 minutes per, idea, right? So the idea here is just kind of scratch the surface, introduce all this, and kind of let you all run with it. I'm going to do some research after the fact. Ashley did say there are a lot of accomplished filmmakers here, right? So that is awesome. I'm going to actually skip down to the point below, which is questions. Any questions or comments throughout, please feel free, raise your hand, chime in, chat, or verbally, what have you. I always love learning from everyone who are in any of my sessions as well. I have a lot to learn also. I will make this slideshow available in the chat afterwards. I got a lot of links to a lot of clips for a lot of these ideas. We definitely will not be able to watch all of them. So you'll have access to that. Before we get started, too, I feel like I need to define kind of what I think makes a good film, because that's kind of where I'm coming from foundationally, right? So I think a good film is accessible to many, personal to you, right? If we have our movies showing in theaters, I think we want to reach out and touch a broad amount of people, right? But on the flip side, if it's not personal to you, there's authenticity there that is very important, right? Good acting, we're going to talk about that. Tells the story visually, challenges the audience. My favorite movies are the ones that when I leave the theater, I'm asking myself questions about the movie or questions about my life or questions about society or what have you. I just like the questioning nature that the artistry of filmmaking can provide and present. And of course, any films mentioned or shown today fit this description, in my opinion. So please check out any of these. And I have a picture of Barton Fink here. Anyone see Barton Fink? Has anyone seen Barton Fink? This is a very old Coen Brothers film. It won Cannes back in the day, and it is about the character Barton Fink who moves to Los Angeles and struggles to become a writer. Also, very surreal movie, very zany in a very Coen Brothers sort of way. I'd highly recommend. It's a great movie, especially if you're a filmmaker, to check out. So there we go. Those are kind of my grounding guidelines there before we get going. So number one, introductions and resolutions. This is something I see over and over and over when I'm working with students and sometimes in other avenues where when is the film going to start? Right. Some of this holds true more so with short films than feature films. I got a 17-minute film that we're looking at, and we're 4 minutes in, and the inciting incident hasn't even happened yet. Right. To me, that's where the movie starts, is that 4 minute mark. So what do we need to do? Do we need to cut down to get our movie going and get closer and start the movie closer to that inciting incident? Or do we really need that introduction? Do we really need all of that intro information? That is really, again, I can't answer that question unless I'm watching specific films, reading specific screenplays. But I did provide this picture of this 3 act structure here that kind of shows this idea of approximately 5 to 15% of your runtime is when the inciting incident occurs, and then of course to the resolution at the end. Now, there's exceptions to this rule, and I put a couple of these up here as well. 2 films that I think are kind of exceptions to this are Hannah and No Country for Old Men in different ways. If you've ever seen the movie Hannah, great action film. Also did an Amazon Prime series based off of it. The inciting incident, I think, gets started a bit after 15%, 20% of the film. We have a lot of introduction going on there. Now, action films, of course, maybe we don't have the inciting incident right away. However, but we usually have some action that pulls us in regardless, right? No Country for Old Men, if you've seen No Country for Old Men, that film kind of seems like it goes on a while after the film ends, after the climax, right? I love both of these films. That's not wrong. I'm giving you examples of films that do kind of the opposite of what I'm saying. But in the case of No Country for Old Men, I think the elongated resolution kind of gives us the definition of what No Country for Old Men actually is. So it's very, very important from that challenging perspective I was talking about earlier. Run Lola Run, great German action film, suspense film, thriller from the 90s that I highly recommend. That punches you in the face and gets you right in. That setting incident happens right away. But again, just ask yourself when you're making your films or watching films, when does my movie start? When does it start pulling the audience? And how much info do we really need before that inciting incident? Casting is 90%. Has anyone ever heard that before? Casting is 90%, right? Um, Is it exactly 90%? Is the inciting incident not exactly have to be 5 or 15%? Not exactly, right? Acting, I think, is pretty dang important. If we don't believe your actors, right? We're probably not going to be into your film. We're probably not going to be engaged. We might start thinking about other stuff, right? I am a firm believer in casting the actor who can play the part, not the actor who is the part or looks the part, right? I think a lot of us, when we write our films, we have an idea in our head of what that character should look like, right? But ask ourselves, what we have in our head of what they should look like, is there anything in the plot there that says they need to look that way? And if the answer is no, then I would highly recommend when you have auditions to bring in actors who don't necessarily look the part, because the ones that don't necessarily look the part could add complexity to your film that you didn't know existed before. And in addition to, maybe those are the better actors who are meant to play the role as opposed to, again, what you had in your head. Sometimes casting against type can introduce complexity and richness that you may not have thought of initially. So this is a great example with the film Alien, right? If you've all heard this, Alien originally, when the screenplay was got out there to be produced, the protagonist was supposed to be a man, and they decided early on, we're going to cast a woman. And now, if you type in alien, feminism, anything like that, you're going to get tons of writing and thought and philosophy and ideas about alien and feminism and roles, gender roles, and things like that that you never would have got if it was just a guy in the film, right? I think Joe Pesci is a great example of this too. If you've ever seen the first film that Joe Pesci was in for Scorsese, that was Raging Bull. In Raging Bull, he doesn't play necessarily the type of character that we think of Joe Pesci. I think when we think of Joe Pesci, we think of the Goodfellas Joe Pesci, the one who's really tough, really aggressive, goes out, gets what he wants, right? I think if we read the screenplay of Goodfellas, maybe we wouldn't have Joe Pesci in our heads when we were thinking about casting. But the fact is, Joe Pesci had the energy, he had the charisma, and he also had the background. To be honest, he is not the actor who is the part. Any of you watched the documentary Mr. Scorsese on Apple TV? There are interviews with the actors from Goodfellas and some of the real life people that Goodfellas was based off of, and it's kind of known that Pesci based his character off of other people that he knew and crossed paths with in real life. So doesn't I don't know if he looks right for the part. All I know is now he's iconic, and that's who he might even get typecast in some ways in that regard, right? So I just think very important. Open up your net for casting, and you're going to find some interesting things that come up when you go ahead and cast those roles. Complex antagonists. And I put in complex antagonists, but I was kind of thinking about villains here. I like my villains who don't just twirl their mustache and we know they're bad and that's all there is to them, right? I like villains that maybe we don't condone their actions, but we understand how they got to that point, and they're complex. They have wants and needs, just like the protagonists, right? I think here on the screen we have some examples of some villains, also antagonists, that I think the movies work because they're charismatic, they're complex, and they have likable moments, to be honest, even though we don't agree with what they do. We don't agree with what their objectives are, things like that. I think the more complex you can make your characters, whether protagonists or antagonists, the more rich and vibrant your film is. Of course, are antagonists always villains? No, antagonists are not always villains, right? I think this is a tricky case with short films because we don't have as much real estate, right? We just don't have as much time to put as much into our antagonist with short films. So what can we do in a short amount of time so our audience can understand who they are, what they want, etc. So, I said I had this on the slide before. Go through the same rigorous prep you would for your protagonists. I think it is so important, no matter which characters you're talking about, protagonists, antagonists, any supporting characters, that you figure out what is their super objective. What is the objective that they need to achieve scene to scene so they can achieve their super objective? Does anyone know what super objective is? Everybody? Right. So super, or someone wanna say what a super objective is? Or I'll define it.
Your objective from start to finish, from the beginning of the film to the end of the film, as opposed to just the scene.
That's right. Yeah. So super objective. What am I accomplishing as a character by the end of the film? This can be their life objective too. And then scene by scene, what is that objective that they need to accomplish in every scene to get them closer, right? Doesn't mean they have to win and achieve that objective every scene, but they just need to be trying to, right? Actions, tactics. And again, this is now we're getting into stuff that I'd spend like, multiple classes on, but this is just kind of, broad strokes. Actions and tactics are what do you do to achieve your objectives, to try to achieve your objectives, and how often do they change whether they work or not, right? I'll give a really short example of this. If I'm a teacher, my goal is to teach all my students whatever we have for the day. Okay. And I come into the classroom and they're all being unruly. And I say to them, good thing we're here today. We're sure learning a lot. right? My action there, depending on how I deliver it, could be to joke, to kid, to try to grab their attention and get them back in. I start lecturing again and presenting materials. They're still messing around. They're still not paying attention. I say, hey, everybody, listen, we got a ton we got to do today. Please, can y'all pay attention? This is really important. My action changed from to joke to ask or to plead or something like that, right? I turn around and I write something on the blackboard that all need to know. And as I do, a paper airplane hits me in the back of the head. I turn around and I go, if y'all don't stop screwing around, you're all failing this course. Now my tactic changed or my action changed to threaten, right? So my goal is to teach, my goal is for them to learn, and I have to change my actions, in order to achieve that goal. Adjustments. Adjustments are those moments, as if moments, or backstory moments, or the scenes before. All right, I'm teaching this class as if I haven't slept. I've been in Vegas gambling for a week. I'm teaching this class as if my dog my dog is lost in the city somewhere and I don't know where he is, right? Anything that's going to add that layers of complexity to your performance. And finally, props. And we'll talk about this a little bit later when we talk about visual storytelling, but I'm a huge proponent. How can you introduce props into your scenes, into your films? Okay. Props bring characters to life. Okay. It gives us little insights into who they are, what they like to do, and they can emphasize things. The most obvious prop use from way, way, way long time ago is you take a sip of water and someone says something outrageous. And what do you do with that water? You spit the water out all over the place, right? But it doesn't have to be that extreme. I'm drinking water and I'm drinking, and then you say something crazy or what have you, and I slam my water to the table, then spills or what have you. Just small little props can tell stories. Plus, it can make the moments and the scenes and the films a little bit more natural. Bare minimum character analysis, vital questions. That's a lot of adjectives there. Bare minimum, because I think your character analysis should be pages upon pages, right? Backstory for your characters. If I asked any of you, who are you in a word, a sentence, or would you write a couple pages? Personally, for these questions, when you're doing this for your characters, if you are the character who's acting in the film, or if you're the director trying to figure out who these characters are, or the actor trying to figure out who these characters are, I think these should be very long, in-depth answers. So who am I shouldn't just be, I'm a teacher, I'm a father, I'm a brother, I'm a husband. Where do I come from? How long have I been in a certain place? All these different things. What are my hobbies? What makes me tick? What am I scared of? What gets me excited? These are all things that your characters need to know. Now, I'm talking characters in general and actors in general. I'm assuming we do this sort of work for our protagonists. But again, from films that I see, I feel like this work is kind of glossed over with the antagonists and the villains. Try to do this work if you can for all your characters. You can have a much more rich, complex film. How do you find out this information? Where am I? Who am I? What do I want? Why do I want it? What happens if I don't get it? Stakes, right? The higher the stakes, the more desperate the character can be. What do I do to get it? What is in my way? What happens as a result of trying to get what I need? Well, you can scrim the screenplay first up. What do we know about the characters and what educated guesses can we make? What do the characters tell us without speaking? What do they tell us in their actions? What do they tell us in their decisions? What do the places they live and work look like? How do other characters act? How do other characters see them, right? What's their family life like? All that kind of stuff. How can we put little snippets of this into our films, into our screenplays, again, to make more complex characters? Yeah, Rhodes.
So, and who's really kind of breaking this down? Is it the writer? Is it the director? Is it the actor? Or all three? Are they, you know, I know it's a culmination of all these ideas that come together, but who really is kind of starting to put all these pieces together from the get go?
Yeah, I mean, no. And going back to the kind of rules, every filmmaker works a little different. Every writer works a little different. Actor works a little different. I do think it's all of the above, right? I think these questions, if you're a writer, you really got to know this stuff because it's going to inform how you write the story, right? It's going to inform the character arc. If I'm I'll tell you how I work, right? If I'm the director, I'm answering all these questions. I'm asking my actors to answer all these questions depending on if I think they're going to do it or not, right? If you get professional actors that have done this a lot, they're going to go out of their way and they're going to take it upon themselves to do this stuff. If you have non-professional actors, and that doesn't mean good, it just means maybe not as experienced, maybe you want to ask them some of these questions and have them answer this and write some of this stuff out for you, right? So you can read what they're thinking and how they're going to approach things. I'm personally, the way I approach it as a director is I don't really, I want to know what they're thinking if if they can write something out for me, again, depending on the level of the actor. I'm not going to necessarily hold them to it or ask them to define it all for me or hold them to my thoughts unless it's not working, if that makes sense. If it works for them and I'm in the rehearsal with them and I believe what they're doing and I can see complexity there and I can see a multi-layered performance, I don't want to like, jumble up their head with a bunch of ideas that don't necessarily have to be there. I want to fix the things that I think need addressing as opposed to the things that I think are working, right? So I'll give you another example. When I'm on set directing actors or in rehearsal directing actors, when I give notes to actors, if they're doing something good, I like to speak in broad terms. And if they're doing something I want, and I'm never going to say bad to an actor, right? If they're doing something that I would like to see adjusted, I'm going to be a little bit more specific with a scalpel, right? Broad terms with the good stuff, because I don't want to say, I love how you said heck yeah in that moment. Do it exactly like that every time. The second you do that, actors can get in their heads and they can think, what did I do exactly that time? I need to do it exactly the same way. And the analogy I'll give is if you've ever done an impersonation of someone before and it was like really good and spot on, and then someone the next day says, hey, do that impersonation again. It was really funny. You're like, can't do it. I can't do it. Right. So when it's good, I like to be like, hey, you're doing awesome. I love it. I love the energy. I love your choices. Keep it up. One moment I want to address though. There's this one point where you grab your brother's hand. Now, don't forget and, speak about these little specifics in as it goes along, right? Don't want people to get in their heads as much as possible. Does that, I know it kind of, I got into production there, but does that kind of hopefully answer your question?
Yeah, everyone does it, and then you see how they all meld on their own. Kind of keep it secret a little bit, and just
Yeah. Here's another thing. I'm a firm believer in, you have your first round of auditions and that can be in a lot of different forms. It could be it could be just in self tapes or it could be in person or what have you. Then you have your callbacks and you're bringing people together and you're switching things up and see how different actors work together, what have you. Before I go ahead and cast a part, again, it depends on, if you got some huge named actor, you're probably not going through this process. You're just offering them the role, right? If it's a no-name actor, which again doesn't mean a bad actor, I'm going to send them the whole screenplay at that point. I'm going to ask them to read the whole screenplay, and then I'm going to get a coffee with them before I officially cast them. And that coffee is not only to see, hey, we're going to sit down and chat about this movie. What ideas do they have in their heads about the characters? What questions do they have? And I'm hopefully going to answer a lot of questions for them about the character and the film and the story while having that coffee. I also want to see how much they're thinking in advance already about the story and the characters, right? I want actors who, I can collaborate with. I want actors who are proactive, right? So I want to see how much how many questions they're coming with. If they come with a lot of questions, that's great, Hopefully 99% of those questions I can answer. And then the 1% of the questions I can't answer, I'm like, that's a great question. Maybe I need to do some adjusting in the screenplay or, maybe that's something we need to, work in rehearsal, right? And that's that collaborative aspect. So it's not like I wouldn't say it's keeping it secret, but it's also just kind of gauging the situation and when do you need to relay information and when is too much information, maybe holding people back. That makes sense. But interview your actors and interview your crew. This is not one of my points, but you're going to work with your crew and you're going to work with your actors for months at a time, right? You have to have a good relationship. Just because they've got a good reel as a DP, they got a good reel as an actor, what have you. You got to sit down and chat with them and say, hey, do I want to spend the next couple of months of my life with this person, right? Is it the right fit? So important, especially because as low budget indie filmmakers, we're spending our own money on these things, when we all get big time, which we all will, we're going to be handed some big time actor who's going to be getting paid a lot more than us. And that's how that system works, right? But right now, I would interview everyone and make sure you can collaborate and you're on the same page. So I have a clip. I have a clip to watch for this. So I have a clip from Gangs of New York. So this is a Scorsese film from early 2000s. This is between two characters. We have the villain, the antagonist here, Bill the Butcher. And in this clip, he is having a conversation with Amsterdam to kind of set this scene up. This character, Bill the Butcher, he was the night before there was an assassination attempt on him, and he is kind of a big guy in New York at this time. And Amsterdam, the person he's talking to, saved his life. So it's the morning after, and he's kind of opening up to Amsterdam. Let's see. So I think, can I just click on this? No. Let me see. I think I'm going to have to get out of my PowerPoint quick and click on the link that way. So I think it's about a 4.5 minute clip. And I won't say anything else. We'll go ahead and just watch it here.
You may have to do the share audio because we can't hear it just yet.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Of course.
All right, everyone. Thanks for your patience. Give me 1 second here. Ashley, would you? Oh, here we go. Share for some. Great. All right, let's try this again. Can you hear it now?
I'm 47.
Yes, we can.
We'll start it over. One more thing. I'm sorry. I got to say one thing. Some of these clips might have some adult language. Just want to throw that out there. So apologies.
Too sure. Never did figure. 47. 47 years old. You know how I stayed alive this long? All these years. Fear. The spectacle of fearsome acts. Somebody steals from me, I cut off his hands. He offends me, I cut out his tongue. He rises against me, I cut off his head, stick it on a pike. Raise it high up, so all in the streets can see. That's what preserves the order of things. Fear. One tonight. Who was he? Nobody. Coward. What an ignominious end that would have been. I killed the last honorable man 15 years ago. Since then, you've seen his portrait downstairs? Is your mouth all glued up with conny juice? I asked you a question.
I said I seen it, sir.
Well, you got a murderous rage in you, and I like it. It's life. Boiling up inside of you is good. Priest and me, we lived by the same principles. There's only faith divided us. He gave me this, you know. That was the finest beating I ever took. My face was pulp. My guts was pierced. My ribs was all mashed up. When he came to finish me, couldn't look him in the eye. He spared me because he wanted me to live in shame. This was a great man. Great man. So I cut out the eye that looked away. Sent it to him wrapped in blue paper. I would have cut them both out if I could afford him blind. I rose back up again with a full heart and buried him in his own blood.
Hold on.
He was the only man I ever killed worth remembering. I never had a son. Civilization is crumbling. God bless you.
Okay, get out of this. Okay, so if you haven't seen this movie, and maybe you can gather it from that monologue, Bill the Butcher has done some pretty bad things in his life, right? He's murderous. He's manipulative. He wields a lot of power, and he wants everyone to know it, and he's gonna kick down anyone who's in his way. But this monologue, in my view, is very sweet and heartfelt and touching. Here we have a villain antagonist who, you know, not only are we learning about him as a character and as a person, but also we have a plot situation going on because this priest that Bill the Butcher is talking about, that is Amsterdam's father, and Bill the Butcher doesn't know that, right? So we have something going on with the other character too, and it's very important for the plot and moving it on to the next scene and what have you, right? But as an audience and as a character, Amsterdam, hopefully we're a little torn here, right? We're like, this guy's a big jerk. He has his moments, right? You know, and it makes it more difficult when we're watching it. It makes it more difficult when we see the relationships to achieve our objectives, to overcome those obstacles, things like that. The more complex the characters are, the more complex the villains are. And again, he says all these terrible things, and in a lesser movie, a lesser actor, I could see something where just like yelling and asserting authority, and he's really delivering it like he's having a very heartfelt conversation with someone he loves, you know? So that is my third point there. Complex antagonists, complex villains. Do your work with these characters and really get your actors to do that work as well. Any questions or thoughts on any of that before we move on? Okay. So the next one is point of view, and whose point of view is it for the film, scene by scene, moment to moment, and how do we show it, right? Now we're moving from kind of started with like writing, acting. Now we're moving into more coverage and visual storytelling. In our films, we show whose point of view it is in a number of ways. Obviously, through screen time and editing, right? If there is a character on screen longer than another character, we feel like we're in that character's shoes. It's their point of view. The story is happening to them, or we're going on a journey with them, right? Does everyone know and I always say this wrong, so I apologize, the Kuleshov effect? Does anyone know the Kuleshov effect? So I don't have this clip, but Google or put into YouTube the Kuleshov effect. But basically, the Kuleshov effect says, and it was this Russian editor back in the early 90s who is like, all right, if I have three pieces of film, or actually two pieces of film, and I put them next to each other, putting the film next to each other creates the meaning, not the individual film on its own or the individual shot on its own. So, for example, if we have a stoic face that is looking at the camera, and then we cut to a bowl of soup, and then we cut back to the stoic face, that editing means hunger. If we have a stoic face and then we cut to, I don't know, a bunch of people dancing, right? And then we cut back to the stoic face, that face could mean being entertained, right? It's about the juxtaposition of images more so than the performance. Now, camera placement and blocking, insanely important for point of view. What point do you cut to the reaction shot? What point do you have the close up, right? But really, really, what I think is so important, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more with the next slide, is where is the camera in relation to the eye line? Keep that in the back of your head. We're going to get to this in a second. Reaction shots. Acting is reacting. Listening is just as important as talking, right? So you have to make sure that your actors are acting even when they don't have lines. It is so, so important. Before moving on to the coverage of another character, of another actor, make sure you have enough of the nods. You have enough of the wheels turning in their heads, of their shrugging their shoulders, what have you. I have here before and after cut. Sometimes you can, if you feel like you don't have the right reaction shot for a character, you can look before you say action and you can look after you say cut to see if they do something, right? Ideally, if the actor is listening and paying attention to the other character, you're going to get all this kind of stuff naturally. There is a little cheat though. If you're going to, before you move on to another actor, if you feel like you haven't gotten enough reaction shots, you could just side coach an actor off camera and say, all right, look to the ground, look up, sigh, shake your head, look down, whatever. That's not very good directing, by the way. That's just results directing and saying, hey, but if you need it because you feel like you want a little bit more options in the editing room, sometimes you want to do that. The reason I'm bringing this up though is because reaction shots, when we cut to a reaction shot, it's often that character's point of view because we see them listening. We see them taking in the information. So that clip we just watched with Bill the Butcher, it was his story that was being told, but it was Amsterdam's point of view because we were seeing how it was affecting him, right? And of course, we always have to keep in mind for point of view, audience identification and universal response. Audience identification is just, does the audience identify with this character and how? And universal response, our films are going to play all over the country, all over the world, different parts of the world, different parts of the country, react differently to different sorts of situations. How universal are your ideas, your themes, your characters, etc. Going back to camera placement and blocking, I drew this up. I'm not so sure it's good or not, but hopefully it'll prove my point. We have two characters here that we're filming a scene for. I don't have a master shot. I just have coverage on each actor. Actor one and actor two. You can see my cursor moving around, right? I think. Yeah. Okay. A are profile shots. They're side of the face, right? So a profile shot, nothing wrong with a profile shot, but it's a pretty cold angle, right? If let's say Ashley invited me into this presentation today and I decided I wasn't going to look into the camera at all. The whole time I was just going to do my presentation like this, right? You're probably not going to think much of me or my presentation skills, okay? Because there's no intimacy going on there. I'm not making eye contact. We're just seeing the side of my face and it's very cold. The more we move the camera towards the eye line and we move that angle from 90 degrees to 45 degrees to whatever degrees C is at, the more intimate the position is. So cameras B, we have more intimacy, more viewer identification because the camera's opening up more to the audience. We get to see more of the reactions, the wrinkles on the faces, the twitches, things like that. B is the closest to the eye line, right? So we have camera C, we have the most open position to character two, and also it is the closest camera to the eye line. So the closer to the eye line again, the more intimacy, the more reactions we can get, the more we feel like we can get in the shoes of the character. I often feel like sometimes with filmmakers, we're getting this coverage, but we're not thinking about how intimate do we want our camera setup. And this can also be like, well, it'd be really cool if I played it all in profile shots. And again, there are some great scenes out there, and I'll talk about that later, where just played in profile shots and just, just amazing acting and cinematography and everything, right? But if you want intimacy, if you want point of view, the more open to the camera, the closer to the eye line, typically is the way to go. I'm not going to show a clip on this slide, but this television show on Netflix called Living with Yourself. It's kind of a fun dramedy with Paul Rudd. Really interesting because it's with two Paul Rudds, right? He plays two different characters. One is himself and one is a clone, and they alternate episodes between what happened and what is going on in the story and showing it from each other's point of view. So one episode will be from one character's point of view, then they'll do the same exact thing and show it from the other character's point of view. And it's a good thing to kind of take a look at and analyze when we're talking about this. And how do I switch point of view? When do I change point of view, right? When is it important that we need to know this character is happy in this situation, not happy in this situation? And again, we want to plan these things out as much as possible as opposed to just hitting record, setting the camera up and hoping we get what we need in that regard. So this is a great, great scene to watch through Studio Binder. When I put this in the chat later, check it out. It's about dominance, character dominance and power, but it has a lot of the same ideas about whose point of view it is and who is the viewer supposed to identify with in a particular clip or moment scene. Okay, so outside of casting is 90%. I don't know. These two, I think, are probably, for me, the two biggest filmmaking ideas that everything I do is about. Show, don't tell. Create a visual story. Show, don't tell. I go to this idea of poetry, which was touched on in the beginning, because the first time I ever heard show, don't tell, I was taking a bunch of poetry classes as an undergrad back in the 90s. My poetry professor's like, the best poems show, don't tell. I was like, wait a second, that is filmmaking too, right? Cinema itself is defined as recording movement. Moving pictures. Do we want to just show mouths moving and heads and shoulders, or do we want to see things happening, right? So at poetry, it's subtext versus coverage and exposition. And of course, the kind of guideline we could follow as much as possible is if you turn the sound off on your film, does it make sense, right? If you turn the sound off on your film and a lot of it doesn't make sense and it's a lot of talking heads with not a lot happening from an action standpoint, you might want to think about, hey, how can I inject some movement, some action, some visual storytelling here? I have two examples up here too. Interestingly, I didn't realize it until I was putting this together. Mad Max Fury Road and Locke were a year apart in their release. Mad Max Fury Road, in my opinion, one of the best action films I've ever seen. It's like there's probably 5 pages of dialogue in this whole movie, a 2-hour film. It's a beautifully shot film and tons of action, and it's like a ballet, in my opinion. Locke, on the other hand, is really interesting because Locke takes place with this character driving in a car for an hour and a half. So he's only talking on his cell phone for an hour and a half. They're both really good films, but told very, very different ways, right? I would say the thing that works for Locke, even though we just see him driving, is we have a lot of subtext going on in the dialogue. We're not just giving exposition and exposition, right? There's a lot beneath the surface. That's where we have this kind of iceberg analogy. So when I'm thinking about visual storytelling, I think a lot about this book. And by the way, anything I show here today or anything I promote, I am not getting paid by anyone to do any of this stuff. There's a book by Bruce Black called The Visual Story, used in a lot of film schools. Great book as far as diving into what tools do we have at our disposal to tell our stories visually. The 7 areas that are emphasized in the visual story are line, shape, rhythm, movement, color, texture, and space. The biggest thing with those is then coupled with, do we constantly have these elements? Are these elements being contrasted against each other, or do these elements progress? So if we go back to acting for a second, our actors have an arc, right? Beginning, middle, and end for our actors. Our actors are one person at the start, and perhaps they have been changed by the end, and we see that progression, right? Do we do that with our visuals as well? We don't have to. We could have a constant. right? We could have one constant visual throughout, and it has meaning and it has metaphor and symbolism behind it, what have you. I don't have the images up here, but I think the easiest examples of this are Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. Darth Vader is, for the most part, the constant, right? He is decked out in all black through 3 movies, and he's pretty much, now he has a character arc too, of course, right? But for the most part, he's all black. He's very, very daunting in his appearance and all that stuff. Luke Skywalker has a much bigger character arc. So visually, his wardrobe changes from movie to movie. In the first movie, he's wearing lighter colors. It's more free flowing, things like that. In the second movie, he's more rebellious. He's learning to become a Jedi. He's got more colorful outfits on. He's got zippers all over the place. He's got accessories, right? I was kind of think that that's like the teenage years. It's when I was wearing my motorcycle jacket and stuff, right? And then the final film, when he's a Jedi Master, he's in a very dark suit, form-fitting, right? We see this visual progression, this visual arc, this visual change. And this can happen in all areas of our visuals, of course, wardrobe, and a lot of different areas. I'll get into this in a second. But when I go back to this poetry thing, icebergs are poems, right? Are your characters and are your images poetic and complex as well? What do we see at the surface, but what lies underneath? When you have a poem, when you write a poem, every syllable has meaning. Every piece of punctuation, how long the line is, has meaning, right? When we're looking at our films, every frame, can we put meaning into each frame? If I take a look at every single one of you, your background tells me something about you. It tells me who you are. It gives me an insight into your life. It gives me an insight into your experiences, right? We don't have to have tons of camera dollies and whip pans and all that kind of stuff. That's nothing wrong with that, but just small little details can tell visual stories, right? I love Gone Girl. I'm going to tell a story about this later, David Fincher. And this is the first shot on top and the last shot of Gone Girl. And this, I think, is a great example of visual change, insanely subtle visual change. By the time we get through the 2.5-hour movie of Gone Girl and we get to this last image, the last image was the first image, but you don't exactly know if she had the same look on her face or not. You don't exactly know if the color and the filters were exactly the same and the color correction. You don't exactly know if focus and all that kind of stuff, the lens, right? But you feel it. You feel that something's different, right? And I think a lot of these elements, we want to have these visual progressions. We want to have these visual contrasts. We don't want the audience to think about it. We want the audience to feel it in their gut, right? I think if the audience is thinking about it, unless we're big film nerds, which if you're here, you probably are. Sorry, I don't mean to call you a nerd, but I'm in that group too. If we're thinking about it, that's either the case or the story's not holding our attention, right? Your inanimate objects and characters are characters or extensions of characters. So your locations tell story. Your props tell story, your wardrobe tells a story, your furniture tells story, etc. Of course, all elements of mise-en-scène that I'm not bringing up, your lens choices, your composition and blocking, all that kind of stuff. All across, this is called Keys to Compelling Dramatic Films, and I have When Harry Met Sally, which is, considered a romantic comedy, but dramatic in its own right. Every single one of these stills tells a story through line, through shape, through texture, through color. Lines bring our eye to a subject. Lines divide subjects. Frames and shapes show people together. Colors distinguish or cause interesting juxtapositions with the environment and the character, right? And if you watch any of these movies, they're all very visual, some more extreme than others. They all have very specific visual elements that they are changing all throughout. Going back to prop use, I brought up prop use a little earlier. Prop use, in my eyes, equals realistic performances, brings the scene to life, shows characters doing things, right? We're not going to watch any of these clips because we're going to watch the next one, which is going to take up a little bit of time. But on the waterfront, any Brando film, he's playing with something, right? What's Brando's most iconic role? Anyone? Or I can tell you what I think. Godfather, right? Right? What's the prop the Godfather has on his lap in the first Godfather? Has anyone seen the first Godfather? The prop Godfather has on his lap in the first Godfather is a cat. He's petting a cat. The story behind that is that Brando's sitting there. He's getting ready to do this scene. He felt like he needed a prop to bring his performance to life, to show the Godfather doing something. There's a cat wandering around the warehouse. He just grabs the cat, puts it on his lap. Now the cat's in the scene. He's petting the cat very gently until the character opposite of the Godfather insults him. Then he sets the cat down. We just told a visual story. I'm a gentle person, godfather who likes cats. Wait a second, you just insulted me? I'm putting my cat down. Now I'm serious, right? It's these small little details. So there's a clip here from On the Waterfront where he uses props masterfully. There's a clip here from Copland, a film that I think is great by James Mangold, where De Niro uses a sandwich masterfully. In the Mood for Love, amazing romantic drama from the early 2000s, Wong Kar-wai. I was talking about intimacy, right? There's a masterful scene here, very intimate, very heart-wrenching scene told only in profile shots. So art's rule doesn't necessarily apply to that, but excellent, excellent prop use and excellent visuals all throughout. I want to watch a little bit of a longer of a clip right now. I want to watch a montage from the film Frida, 2002. Maybe we all know the painter Frida, surrealist Mexican painter. So this is a biopic about Frida. We're going to watch a scene about Frida has just found out that her husband is cheating on her with her sister. So the scene we're going to watch, which is about 2 minutes long, shows her reaction to that and how she responds and how she moves on. Tons of stuff going on visually. So I want to watch it. And then I want to just hear from you guys, if I can. What did you notice visually? Line, shape, rhythm, movement, color, texture, space? Was there progression happening? Were there any constants to the images? Was there any visual arc that we see implemented? Because I often like showing a clip and I'm like, just watch it, just soak it up, just take it in. All right, now let's watch it again and now let's nitpick. Let's look for the specifics. All right, so Frida's moving back in with her parents. She just found out because she's leaving her husband because her husband was sleeping with her sister.
Tengo miedo de buscarte y de encontrarte donde me asegura y agarraste y tus caricias han de ser mías de nadie más. Y aunque lo quiero ser libre, vivir mi vida con quien yo quiera. Dame fuerza, estoy muriendo por irla a buscar.
Let's watch it again really quick. We got time. So this time now, concentrate on those visuals. Do we see change? Do we see consistent things that are happening? How do the visuals reflect the story that is taking place?
Tengo miedo de buscarte y de encontrar donde me aseguran y agarraste por tu cuello. Ya no juegues con mi honra, parrandera, y tus caricias han de ser mías, de nadie más. Te amo, quiero ser libre, vivir mi vida con quien yo quiera. Dios, dame fuerza, que me estoy muriendo.
Okay. So, what did we see? We didn't even have to make any bold, grand, observations. Just like what stood out, what was cool, what did you like, what drew you in?
The reflection of the windows on the wall and in the first scene and
Yeah.
the framing of the windows and her chair, the lines on the chair, the mirror.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, that's great. And to me, that's subtle stuff because as viewers, cinematically, we're kind of used to that stuff. But that's really important, right? Is she happy in this new home of hers? It kind of feels like a lot of lines, bars, things like that, directing our attention. So yeah, good. What else?
During the montage scenes of her cutting her hair, all those are never straight on until the very end when it becomes her story. The rest of it is telling the storyline, and that's all shot straight on. The storyline then becomes this new storyline at the very end.
Yeah, absolutely. Good observation. We have during the hair cutting, we have a lot of like what we would call like Dutch tilts, right? Like kind of skewed, off-angled shots, kind of showing her reality is a little off center, right? Yep, good. What else?
And the music echoing
Mm.
the feeling of the room and with its like desperation and then anger and back and forth
Yep, absolutely.
with the cuts.
Right. I can't, one of these cinematic moments where I don't think you can imagine the scene or the film without that music. So did they have that in mind already? Was it recorded already? Could be. I don't know, but yeah, it's perfect, right? Yeah. What else? There's more. There's more.
I assume it was her sister in the car outside, and when she comes in, she's closing off that relationship almost with the doors.
Are you Anthony? You must be a mind reader because she never says, "Sister, why have you done this to me?" But that is her sister, right? This is great visual storytelling. We already know. We already know who her sister is. We already know that her sister has hurt her. This is a point I'm going to make a little bit later about editing, but maybe there was some dialogue there that they cut out because they realized when they get to the balcony and they get to the car, we don't need anything. We just need these looks, right?
Her face and her look. Yeah.
I mean, I love everything about this montage, but that moment to me is just awesome, right? It's like we just don't need any words. We know the hurt that they're both feeling, right? And even in some ways, we have a complex villain or a complex antagonist there in the sister because I know she did something terrible, but I kind of feel bad for her.
Well, she's got her kids in the back seat.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that last scene where with the painting and the mirror, and that was amazing. Both the angles and then the two of them and her walking out of it.
Yeah. I mean, the one really cool thing about this scene is that this scene is actually her painting her self-portrait.
Right.
And we never see a brush stroke, right?
Mhm.
But because Frida Kahlo's artwork is surreal and the film is surreal, we have a lot of like poetic license and artistic license to do a lot of different creative things, almost like a music video, right? Which is kind of is like a music video. A couple more things I got in mind. Anyone else wanna chime in before I talk about a few other things?
It's an art video.
What's that?
I said it's an art video.
Yeah,
An
yeah.
artist. Yes.
Yeah, they're all art videos. That's right.
But I mean hers especially. And
Yeah.
in the painting, the hair on the floor to me was impactful. The way it was strewn.
That's right. Absolutely. I got a 3-year-old at home, which is one reason I couldn't go to the Tryon Film Festival. And I could see my son looking at that paint and be like, "Why are there snakes? Why are there snakes there? What are the snakes doing there?" But that's like stuff as adults we feel, right? I took all of these. I just kind of just broke them down moment by moment, or not all of them, right? But a bunch of them. Because I think there's some change going on. I think there's some progression happening in this. I think we have progression in line and shape, right? We pointed out the lines in shot one here. They're kind of askew. They're kind of moving, giving some action to the image, right? And then by the final frame, we have these frames within frames. In some ways, she's changed, right? She's changed from the beginning to the end. I think in some ways she's more distant, right? I think lines kind of show that. I think color shows that too. We have this kind of earth tone, muddy colors palette. We move to this kind of gray, kind of diseased color palette in the party. The darkest moment of the montage is when she confronts her sister, and there's no colors in that moment, right? It's all dark, right? We go from muddy earth tones to green, kind of sickly, to completely dark, to at the end, I'm a little bit stronger now, but it's all blue. It's all cold, right? I'm not the same person as I was before. Camera movement is really, really important for this sequence. What did people notice about the camera movement? Anyone?
I saw it at the time, but I can't remember what I was thinking. When she was sitting down and right as she was about to cut her hair, there was something there that I can't remember what I was thinking now.
Well, I'm gonna recreate in shot number 1 here that I have labeled. I'm gonna recreate the camera movement with my own camera there, which is like this, right? The camera is moving like this, and that it's simple, but it's also pretty courageous camera move. Not something we see every day. Reflects a lot of things going on. She's on shaky ground. She doesn't know where her life's headed. Plus, I always tell my students, I don't know if you ever sit down with a bottle of booze one evening, everything's going to be looking like this a little bit. So you got a lot of reasons for that camera movement. We go to the party and to the cutting the hair, and we got more handheld. Well, things are more shaky, things are more ajar, things are a little bit more frantic. Again, by the end of the clip, when she's gone through this whole thing, when she's come out the other side, a different person, We have a camera move from shot 8 to shot 9 and 10, where we do a slow dolly backwards. It's slow and steady. It's surgical, right? It's medical, right? Because she, as a person, is very different now. She's more cold. Part of her heart is broken, you know. But so that camera progression kind of reflects her story, right? I'm just trying to think. Last thing I'll point out here, not only do we have frames 6 and 7 when she sees the sister, but we have the dirtiest frames too, right? So we all know what a dirty frame is. Yeah, I'll just say it quick
I
in
don't.
case. Well, a dirty frame is just when there's something between the camera and the subject.
Okay.
So this is a clean frame of me right now. Now it's a dirty frame. So all this in shot 7 there, that foliage, the power lines, or the balcony and the stuff, right? We have things between her and her sister, and the same with when we cut to her sister. She's inside the car. She's framed, right? So we have barriers. We have barriers there. So it's not just that it's dark. We have these natural barriers. So yeah, you know, that's a 2-minute sequence. We could turn the sound off and pretty much have a pretty good idea of what that story is, I think. Now, if we haven't seen the whole film, we wouldn't know about the sister cheating and all that kind of stuff, but we know she's going through something. We know she's changing. We know she has a problem with that woman. We know she comes out the other side better, but not bitter. Kind of a bittersweet ending to that sequence. Questions or comments about that? Okay. This is one of my last slides here. Kill your darlings. Who's heard this expression before? So this ties into what I was talking about with the last sequence on the balcony. I have never seen a movie that didn't need something to be cut out of it in post after it was done, after production was done. And I think one of the biggest obstacles that filmmakers experience in post is like, oh my God, I can't cut that scene out. It cost $3,000 to film, and we were there for 2 days and all this stuff. And you have to be objective. You have to step back and you have to say, does this scene help my movie? Do I need these lines that these characters are saying? Can I cut these lines out? Can I reorder things in different orders to help better tell a story? The two examples here, Apocalypse Now and Donnie Darko. You know, for Apocalypse Now, we have the original Apocalypse Now, which a lot of people consider a masterpiece. I think it's an amazing movie. And then back when I was in my first run at film school, they released Apocalypse Now Redux or Redo, right? Which was like an extra hour of footage. And when I saw Apocalypse Now Redux or Redo, I was like, wow, the original Apocalypse Now is just so much more effective and such a better representation, I think, of the original vision. Now, I don't know what the original vision is. I wasn't Coppola. I wasn't there at the time. But to me, watch Apocalypse Now, then watch the re-release Redux and take a look and say, hey, which one is better? Which one is more effective? Which one has a more clear, succinct story? I have Donnie Darko here. I think one disadvantage we all have with this, well, I won't get into the streaming movies today, as opposed to DVDs. Back in the day with DVDs, there's always deleted scenes on the DVDs that we could watch, right? I love Donnie Darko. It's a cult classic film. I remember watching this for the first time and then watching the deleted scenes and then being like, wow, I'm so glad those scenes were not in the movie because I could totally tell from these deleted scenes why they took them out, right? But I'm telling you, filmmaker after filmmaker that I chat with or I sit in the editing room with, we're always very, very resistant to making those difficult cuts. So what can we do to kind of get around that? I think you got to have good collaborators. Okay. People that you really trust, people that can be objective. Don't listen to your mom and your dad and your grandma about how to cut your movie because they're going to want you to keep everything in. They love you, you know, right? You need to listen to the people who are going to be very, very objective and say, look, this is a nice scene, but it's just not right in this moment. If you can do this in advance of filming, that is the best thing possible, right? Because if you can cut stuff out before you film, you're saving yourself time and money, which is the most valuable thing we have as filmmakers. But again, in post, as you're editing your film, do not be afraid to cut. Two stories I'm going to tell you about this. I went to California Institute of the Arts, Cal Arts, for graduate school. That's when I moved out to California. The film that I used to get in was a film I shot in Oshkosh, Wisconsin for undergrad. The original edit of that film was 20 minutes long. And after I had made the movie and it was done, I knew something was wrong, but I just didn't know what it was. I spent a year and a half, 2 years reworking that film. And the film that I submitted to CalArts to get in was 10 minutes long, half the length. And the last scene of the original became the first scene of the new cut. And I'm totally convinced I would have never gotten into film school if I wouldn't have made those changes. For a professional example is Gone Girl. I saw Gone Girl in the theater years ago, and Fincher did a Q&A afterwards. And the first question that Elvis Mitchell asks David Fincher after we watch the movie is, now that the film's been out for months, what do you think about it? And the first thing he says is, I can't even watch this movie anymore. There's scenes that need to be cut. There's lines that need to be cut. There's scenes in the wrong place. And I always say, look, if David Fincher, who I think we all can agree, whether you like David Fincher or not, he's got a pretty decent film career. If he can be that hard on himself, I think we can do that too. Now, that being said, we can't have paralysis by analysis, right? We could spend years until it's never going to be perfect. You got to let it go sometime, you know. But get peers, colleagues that you trust who believe in you, believe in your story, but are also going to be professional and honest with you, and say, hey, I believe in you. I believe in the story. I love what it is, but it can be better if this is done or that or is done or what have you. Last personal anecdote I'll say is I think pretty much every movie I've ever written myself and shot, I think almost every one I've cut out my favorite scene at the end of the day. Like, I've had so many short films or features where I'm going through and I'm making edits, and I'm like, man, when I first sat down to write this film, this was the scene I was most excited about. And then after my edits of the screenplay, it's not there anymore. Or in post, I cut it out. I don't know why that is. I don't know what's wrong with me, but you got to make those decisions, especially for short films, because festivals really want short films, right? So don't keep in a lot of the quote unquote fat when the shorter your film is, the better chance you're going to have of getting into festivals. So that is, for the most part, the 6 keys in my eyes, not the only ones, to look at, pay attention to when you're crafting your movies. Now, I don't know if we really have time for this. I have a link to a short film I think is amazing. You can all watch it on your own time if you want, or we could watch it and then talk about it, whatever. I know we've been at this for a bit. This is a film called Share, and it won Best Short at Cannes in 2015. I don't have any ties to this movie either. I actually was at the premiere, though. It premiered at the Directors Guild in LA because it was part of the Directors Workshop for Women, which is a collaboration with the DWW, or a collaboration between the Directors Guild and AFI. I walked out of the theater that day seeing this film, and I was like, man, that film was amazing. And then like 6 months later, it won Cannes. Not everything we talked about, but a lot of things we talked about, I think, are applied in this movie. A lot of the ideas, right? So quick inciting incident and resolution, complex characters, and good casting choices, visual storytelling, changes in the visuals to reflect the characters in the story, and of course, whose point of view is it at different moments, and whose shoes are we in, and who do we feel for, viewer identification throughout. So yeah, again, we got like a little over 5. Well, we got about 9 minutes left, but we could watch it and then talk about it, or I'm happy just to chat with you all and then share with you the slides. And there's a lot of other clips, or we could go back and watch another clip that's shorter as well from something else that I had earlier that I skipped over. Whatever y'all want to do.
Totally up to you guys. If you guys have any questions that you want to start asking.
I feel like, well, I don't, not really a question, but a lot of the stuff you said, aligns up with some other stuff I've heard, like even reading Save the Cat and like the show don't tell type things, and having to, and a lot of this was like actually a good refresher for when we're going and judging all these films for the film festivals that we've got. Just be like, oh yeah, okay, this is slow build up. This, you got 2 minutes of nothing going on here. How is this antagonist really playing his character well? Or I thought it was, it was great to just get a refresher, and you even brought up a lot of things that I had never heard of because I didn't go through film school properly. So all these terminologies, I'm like, oh, okay, I don't know. I'm not that film buff as a lot of filmmakers are, but I still love the whole process. So I love this class tonight. So thank you for all that.
But yeah, I'm glad to hear you got some stuff out of this. But we make films for everybody, right? We just don't make films for cinephiles. So important. It's so important to get everybody's viewpoint on this. Um, there's something I was gonna say based on what you said, and I don't remember what it was.
Save the cat thing.
Oh yeah, well, I own Save the Cat, but I haven't read Save the Cat.
Yeah.
One of
One
these
thing in there,
days.
he says, "Show don't tell." He really hates it when people put like a newscast on the TV and they just tell you all the story that's happening instead of actually showing you all the stuff that's happening.
What I was gonna, yeah, and what I was gonna say is there are some. I mean, some of my favorite movies are just insanely slow burns, and the plot is moving forward. It's just not exciting. It's just more meditative, right? So it's just kind of like balancing. Again, there's no good or bad. It's just like what is each individual taste, and then as a whole, how is the film received, right? But yeah, the movie that comes to mind, Gus Van Sant did a film. I think it was in the '90s. He did a couple of these films. One called Elephant and one called Last Days. Elephant was about the Columbine shooting, and then Last Days was about Kurt Cobain's last days. And you want to watch a couple slow movies? Check these movies out. But they're challenging films, right? They're asking the audience to do a lot of heavy lifting, right? So again, there's no right or wrong, but sometimes you're just like, well, this is slow for slow's sake, not because it's has something else it's trying to put forth to the audience or what have you. So it's just kind of balancing and figuring all that stuff.
I feel like I was kind of like Boyhood a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely. I like Boyhood. I mean, I liked it quite a bit, but I haven't seen it in a while. So I don't remember. The only thing I remember, well, not the only thing, but one of the things I remember about Boyhood is that there's a scene where they're throwing saw blades. Did everyone see Boyhood? And they're throwing saw blades, and I remember in that moment being like, because we're as an audience, we're conditioned to think something bad's going to happen. They're throwing saw blades, and then nothing bad happened, right? And then in an interview, the Linkletter was talking about, well, that's just what we did as kids, and I'm like, yeah, I can relate to that in the in the woods of Wisconsin throwing saw blades around or whatever, and my folks not knowing, so it's like we have these ideas in our head as audience members and things, and sometimes just defying those conventions can be a little jarring.
Hey, Arthur, thanks for doing this. This is wonderful. And as Rhodes said, it was a great refresher. Question for you. So you think it's a good philosophy? Because, a lot of us didn't go to film school. We all have our ways we got into this industry. You think it's a good going into the mindset of like, I'm going to write this short script, knowing that I'm going to write scene A to B to C to D, all the way down the alphabet, but knowing that I should be taking some of this out, at least getting a grasp of the story, but get ready to get rid of it. And to piggyback on that, when you were in school at Cal Arts, did a lot of your professors rip your scripts in the same sense like that?
Yeah, great questions. And Pat, thanks for joining. Great to. All right. So yeah, okay, a lot of questions. Oh, so I'll work backwards. Yeah, so at Cal Arts and film school, yeah, they tear all your stuff apart. They tear all your stuff apart. So a big part of going to film school is just getting a thick skin and just getting used to that and knowing it's not coming from a place of, maliciousness or anything. It's coming from a place of they just want you to make the best stuff possible and they want you to grow as much as possible. If you didn't go to film school and you're making movies, I am jealous of you, by the way, right? Because because you probably don't have the school debt that I have. Self-taught works too. Obviously, we got a pretty big self-taught filmmaker named Tarantino who I think's doing okay out there. Pat, what was the other part of your? Oh, you wanted about writing and knowing you're going to cut later or whatever. Yeah. So I like to, and I heard this from someone else. My first draft of a screenplay, I always call the vomit draft, right? So you just vomit it out. And I'm always writing it and thinking to myself or making little notes, go back and do this in this scene, go back and cut this out of this scene or what have you. But I don't stop writing and I don't go back, right? The thing you don't want to do as a writer is you don't want to like, oh, I just wrote scene 2. Let me go back and rework scene 2 as much as possible and then move to scene 3, right? Anything you do to scene 2 is going to be affected by scene 8. You got to get to scene 8 first. You got to get to the end of the movie first because now you may have spent all that time on scene 2, but scene 8 now you got to go back and change it again anyways, right? So I thoroughly believe in just write some screenplay. If you want to make a short and it's 30 pages long, awesome. Write that short. It's 30 pages long knowing you got to go back and make cuts and edits and tweaks and adjustments and all that stuff. Did I get everything, Pat? I don't
No, that's it. Because I just sometimes when we write alone, we don't know other processes. I mean, you read all the books and things like that, but you're like, oh, that doesn't pertain to me. These guys have done this and done that. But it's talking to the people like yourselves that are in the trenches, and everybody else on here too. That really, that's where I listen. My ears perk up when I can really take nuggets from you guys and learn from your mistakes. So
Well, I just want to say, watching your films, I learn a lot as well, right? So, having you here with your insights and everything, it's much appreciated. All that being said, experience is king, right? I do things a certain way. Another director, filmmaker does things a little different or a lot different. There's a lot of ways to skin a cat, right? So, I tell my film students this all the time because they're probably gonna maybe while they're at the New York Film Academy, they're going to have 3 different or 4 different directing instructors. And I'm like, probably 60% of what we tell you is going to be the same. And maybe 40% is going to be a little different. Just try all the things out and what works best for you. I'm not offended. We all have these things that work best for us, right? So it's really about experimentation in that regard as well.
I agree with that too. And it's the same thing for actors too out here.
Mm,
Came out to LA and I was like, I need a good acting teacher. And the
mm,
people like, "Oh, this guy's great." And I went there and I'm like, am I that terrible of an actor that
mm,
I hate this guy?
mm,
And I learned that not every actor is the same as not every director that you're going to get along with and get their philosophy and what you like. So that was kind of the whole thing with feeling comfortable with yourself and your own skin and how you are on set instead of
mm.
saying, I want to be Tarantino. I got to do this shot type of thing. Da da da.
No, absolutely, and obviously, who you are on set, that evolves too, right? If I'd be really scared to go back and watch footage of myself directing my first film, compared to today, and it's still you learn every time you're on set working with different people. I think the key is, like, just get honest professionals on your side, on your team, and no matter what happens, that energy, that vibe, that collaboration is gonna come through, but, yeah, I mean, I think every teacher has something to offer, but sometimes as students, we got to figure out what it is that, how much of it we should take and use and implement and all that stuff. Anything else?
So, kind of along some of your points that you're making, and I was brought this question during a 48 recently, and it was, should we try to move? We'll have this limited time, so we
Mm,
try to move locations so that our film looks more engaging because there's a lot of different locations, a lot more movement throughout the story, or is it just two people in a room talking to each other with good dialogue or good actors or so obviously, ideally, you'd have great locations, great, all the money in the world, great actors, great script, but you can't have all those things. And this is kind of leaning into the point earlier that you said it's 90% casting and 9% actors. Um, where either you can answer this, where would you put the weight in, or is there more benefit to moving a story along visually versus dialogue and story?
Yeah, I mean, that is every project is different, right? I
Yeah.
can't, like, say overall. I think my dramatic films I tend to like with less dialogue. That's my personal. But then again, I don't know, there's always movies that just, blow me away, that just tons of amazing witty dialogue. Going back to, you can't always have great locations and great actors and great all this stuff, right? I would challenge everybody here. If you're going to make a movie, doesn't matter what your location is. You can find an angle. You can find a shot or a composition where that location is going to tell your story, right? You don't have to spend thousands of dollars. And that was, I'll backtrack a little bit with my slides here. When I came up with the slide for this slide showing locations, I had a bunch of really grand locations, and I'm like, wait a second, I can't have all these grand, awesome locations because that's not practical. That's not where we're going to be filming, right? So, I mean, honestly, two of my favorite shots. I mean, they're all awesome stills, but two of my favorite stills here is the When Harry Met Sally and the Past Life stills. For the most part, those are locations we can get and we can find, but we need to find a way to light it the right way, use the colors the right way, compose it, and have the blocking the right way to tell the story, as opposed to obvious, like, I don't know. I don't think I'll ever have the conclave location. That is, you know, it's hopefully one day, but we can't all have that. But so what do? You rehearse in the space that you have that you think is great. be open-minded in that space. When you rehearse in that space, ask yourself, well, wait a second, I came to this space and here's how the furniture is arranged. Is this the best position for the furniture? A lot of times I'll say to my students, well, hey, there's something hanging on the wall there and the couch is there. Why did you do that? And they'll say, well, that's how it was when I rented the location. And I was like, no, it's a set. You arrange things in the best possible manner. So your windows, your light sources, your exits and entrances are in the best locations, right? And then once you block it out, then you and your DP walk around with a lens finder and say, hey, where's the best place to put this master shot that I'm going to have? Where's the best look, So all the lines go, the natural lines of the space, direct our eye towards the protagonist, things like that. So all me saying all this right now, this is all experience, right? It's just the more you do it, the more you have a better eye for this, the more you're more flexible when you go on set. You might be, when you get on set, you might be like, no, I have to have this shot and I have to have this insert and all this stuff. But sometimes you got to have that flexibility and that objectivity, be like, well, the scene has changed now that we're here. And now myself and the DP, we need to come up with different coverage because the blocking's different or what have you, right? There was that moment so I brought up the moment on the balcony where maybe that was, again, I don't know, but maybe that was a moment on the balcony in Frida where they cut dialogue out, right? That scene from Gangs of New York when Bill the Butcher walks up, kisses his hand and pats Amsterdam on the head. Maybe that wasn't in the screenplay. Maybe that was the actors and they came up with that in that moment, right? And now that's one of the most important moments of that scene. And now suddenly you have a new moment that the actors found that is awesome, and you need to get a different shot for that moment or something, right? So um, it's being as prepared as humanly possible, because when you're prepared as humanly possible, you're going to be more flexible and more accepting when things don't go right or things are kind of get a little jumbled, and you're going to roll with the punches better. So I know it's kind of, again, broad answer, kind of all over the place, but yeah.
No, you know what? Really briefly, it was back to the Frida, the scene of them raising the bed up, trying to get it in. Again, that wasn't as important. And this was maybe me, or maybe it was some Hayek and her choice telling the director this or the director. When that bed came in the room, there was no mattress. And for me, it's telling a lot. Who was on that mattress, getting even rid of that nice shot. It was elegant, raising the bed through the stairwell and blah, blah, blah. But for me, it was just that small little thing of those guys bringing in the bed without the mattress told me so much more.
Absolutely. Those are the, I'll tell you, I've been using that Frida clip for a long time and no one's ever made that observation. That is a great observation. That's the thing about great, rich, complex visual storytelling is we can watch it 100 times and 100 times find some cool little nuance that we hadn't seen before. And to me, it's like going to a museum. Oh, we go to a museum and we stand in front of a painting or a sculpture or something. And depending on where we stand, depending on how the light's hitting it, what have you, depending on our mood that day, as we probably all know, probably there's a couple festivals we haven't gotten into because that day the programmer or whoever was watching our movie had a cold or got in a fight with their boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever, you don't know. There's a million reasons and there's a million things that can affect our view and our observations and things like that. But yeah, that's a great observation with that mattress. That is really cool. To me, it's those details that make it worth it. So that, the other question that Rhodes asked, I think, was kind of like, well, what's more important, the visuals or the acting? Even though I say acting is 90%, I think I go with acting because I know if it's good acting, I can film it very simply, and I think the audience can still be engaged. But of course, I still want the amazing visuals that you could take any still and just boom, put it on your wall, and it's just a cool looking composition, right? So we want the best of all worlds, ideally, but I think we can't all have it. So you just got to make those decisions in pre-production and in production and then in post-production. What's most important for this film and this story at this time, and you do the best you can.
I gotta go feed the baby now, but thank you so much for this class. It was awesome.
Thank you. Great seeing you all, and hit me up, my emails. And yeah, you guys have any more questions or comments or anything, please get in touch. Great seeing you all, and I hope it was beneficial, and maybe I'll see you in Beaufort or Tryon next year or this year, right?
Yeah, we would love to have you.
Yeah.
Reedy
Sure.
Reels. Get Reedy Reels.
Yeah, Reedy Reels. So Rhodes is the festival director for Reedy Reels.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Very cool.
It's a great festival. It just happened though, unfortunately.
Okay.
But there's always next year.
Well, I'm shooting something this summer, so I don't know personally what I'll have prepared or not prepared, but of course, attending any festival is a good time if I can do it, you know. So
Awesome. Thank you. Well, thank everybody. Thank you guys so much for coming. Art, thank you so much for teaching this for us. I had a great time. I learned a lot, and I'll see you guys next month.